Hi, good evening, viewers. Thank you again for joining us for S.H.E Gallery, the session on CAN TV. We are viewing live tonight. Please join us. You can call in. The number is 312-738-1060. Alternatively, you can join us online at cantv.org/hotline. We're going to recap our previous episode here on S.H.E Gallery. We were talking about graffiti and street art. We have a special guest tonight, long-term friend of mine and fellow cohort in the arts, Flash.
How you doing?
All right. Yeah,
All
yes.
right, Trix.
No doubt. Glad to have him aboard here. And,
Thank you for having me.
Yes, indeed. Again, we are here with S.H.E Gallery. Give us a call. You can join us online. We're going to be talking about some art. So in our previous episode, we talked about the phenomenon of graffiti and street art for urban youth culture. We have some video footage we're going to review on a lecture that I did previously, and we're going to have a little talk and discourse about that. And then we're going to have an in-depth talk with Flash about some of the up-and-coming projects we have here in Chicago and some general aspects of the art and the craft, which is our focal topic for this episode. All right. Flash, thanks for joining us. Give us a brief summation of your involvement or your participation in the Chicago pioneering of graffiti and urban art forms.
Well, as he said, my name is Flash ABC, a member of Artistic Bombing Crew, a graffiti crew brought up in Logan Square between 1979 and 1987. And after that, that's all I can really talk about as far as the beginning years of graffiti, because I went on into the military. But between 1979 and 1986, I saw the start of what we see of graffiti art evolved, and I got to see it in Logan Square in Humboldt Park, and I had a Vivitar camera from 8th grade, and I documented. Most of those pictures can be seen on artisticbombingcrew.com, and it's where we only show the 80s, what we did in Logan Square back in the day. So we can say we had fun because it's the start of something that nobody else was doing at the time.
Yeah.
You know, nobody else was doing it. And we started in little segments, and it grew to that when I came back in 2003, there was a whole community there that I was welcomed back into. And I'm very proud to have been welcomed back in.
And for just a quick reference for our viewers, Flash is noted as a archival photographer. He keeps tracks of a lot of different projects featured around the city. We have a caller. We're going to take a caller right now. Hello, thanks for joining S.H.E Gallery tonight on CAN TV. How can I help you? You have a question?
Hello, yes. My name is Gringo.
How you doing, Gringo?
Gringo, I'm a great fan of Flash. I've seen his work all over the city with his gang. Smiling and relaxing now because he is too cool. So, you know, you got a big crew out here looking out, and we're big fans, and we're excited for your work and the upcoming projects that are coming. So, more power to you. We love you out here.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Much appreciated. Thanks for joining us, Gringo.
Thank you. That's Gringo from the All-Star Dance Group. For those that don't know, a dance group that started back in the 80s. And when we say hip-hop, those were the people that we were following back in the day. They were very inspirational to us. They were a dance group. And now he has a book out, and I'm working on some projects with him also.
Okay, great. Great to hear. All right.
Funny that he got through.
Okay, and continuance, we were talking about art and urban forms here in Chicago and abroad. We have Flash. He's joining us. He's a Chicago pioneer in the urban art forms, and he's also a historian. So we're going to have a little bit more discourse with him shortly. we're going to take some time and review some of our topics that we discussed in the previous episode, which is this first of a 10-part series. Today's episode and focal topic is the art and craft, in which Flash will elaborate a little bit more about different aspects of art and artistic production, how it's done, what is considered graffiti and what is not, or vice versa. And we'll also review different aspects of looking at it from a purely academic sense. All right, so here, we're going to switch to some video for a moment. In previous episodes, we talked about different aspects on why the phenomenon of graffiti occurred, and we talked about different motives for why people chose to do graffiti as a phenomenon. So again, in this episode, we'll be talking about the art itself collectively. So I'm going to locate a specific section here for you, and we will start this replay, and me and Flash will have a little short discourse on different components of it.
Mass consumerism. Nostalgic circle. I think that people should look at
starting shortly.
At how
Again, in our previous episode, we talked about different aspects of graffiti and graffiti art and how it came about as a genre in the artistic mediums. We talked about how since its resurgence, there hasn't been any new art form movements that haven't been based on graffiti and graffiti art-based forms. With the advent of street art, which was the which was the next succession of different aspects of public art, which was based on guerrilla art and graffiti art forms of previous. So, without further ado, we're going to briefly review this graffiti lecture, which was part of an event that Flash co-hosted in Logan Square.
So now we can look at some other elements of that pictorially. So again, the point I want to emphasize again is the concept of the old theory of our motivations to do graffiti. So if for 50 years of research, we have libraries and volumes on that, and what motivates people to do it. We have people have still access today why we do it. I challenge them to look at it this way. And I've said this before, some of you may be familiar with it. The concept of property ownership is one of the primary factors that was the challenge to our art form blossoming and to at a scale that it should have been at by now. But what I say to those people who still have that outlook or have that question lingering is it's innate in us to do this. It's innate in us to express in our environment. As we see art in public spaces precedes property ownership by 100,000, 30, 40,000 of years. So for 30 or 40,000 years, prior to mainstream graffiti research, meaning documented research and pondering on why and what is this stuff and why is it done, there's thousands of years, according to the common record. Where from the first historical findings of art and cave art and things of that depiction, all up into symbolism, meaning symbolism as it relates to us and using alphabetic structures as the art form itself. So if all this time has elapsed, and we've done all this research currently up until this point, which we'll look at in a moment, I think it should be time to consider to answer that question, why it's done. It's innate in the human form, the human organism, to express itself. And if that's the prime motive that I've heard from other artists express to me as well, that they enjoy doing it, that it's in our blood. We look at things like tattoos, and we personal adornment, the need to adorn the human form, and we adorn and embellish things to designate and represent, our feelings, emotions, things of that nature. So if art precedes, painting in public spaces precedes property ownership, for somebody to say, oh, you can't do that. So at least consider that when pondering why people do this stuff and why it's becoming increasingly the most widely accepted artistic form for a youth audience.
Okay. We're live again with S.H.E Gallery on cantv.org hotline. You also can call in at 312-738-1060. We're joined by our special guest, Flash, of the Artistic Bombing Crew, long-term friend of mine's, a crew member, and we're here discussing and talking about graffiti and graffiti art. We just showed an excerpt of a lecture that we had at Host Gallery, Hairpin Gallery here in Logan Square. And we, in this lecture, talked about different aspects, and we brought them in their entirety here to this 10-episode discourse. Again, the art and craft of graffiti. You care to share with us any insight or ideas on how a person could really come to understand the art and craft itself? What is it? How do you do it? Like, how would a person come to know or come to be a part of it?
Well, the best thing is to separate it. What is graffiti art and what is street art? Because there's a lot of confusion these days of what is what. And as a traditionalist that does graffiti art, I always try to push it that there's nothing wrong in street art, but there is a difference. The difference is in street art, it's a message. It isn't a message. It's a wheat paste. It isn't. It's a tag. But what we do as old school graffiti artists is we show the evolution of the tag. We show the evolution of the letters. We don't do murals unless they have graffiti letters. And those graffiti letters have structure and they have balance and flow, depending on what city you're from.
And we have a caller. Let's take a caller. How you doing, caller? Thanks for joining us, S.H.E Gallery, tonight. Do you have a question for us?
Hello.
Comment?
This is Art. Hey, how you doing, man? This is Artistic.
Oh, hey, what's up, Artistic? How you doing, brother?
All right. How y'all doing tonight?
Oh, great. Thanks for calling.
Yeah. So my question was, I wanted to know, what do y'all think is the reason why kids got into this type of art at a young age?
Well, I mean, we've been talking in varying respects as it relates. We're trying to determine that. We're trying to uncover that. I mean, everyone can have, give reference to their own personal experience, but collectively, I ponder that question sometimes. I mean, I got into it because I was, also a b-boy, and it became second nature, to decorate our clothes because I had seen a few things done similar. But ultimately, like I said, the first episode, we spoke about the phenomenon, because it is a phenomenon. I'm glad you posed that question, because it takes us right back to that first concept of the art form, is the phenomenon. It was random, it was spontaneous, it was a youth-derived culture, derived for youth, by youth.
If you remember as a youth, Artistic, in Chicago, it took longer because the gangs were harder to get through. But once we figured out that we didn't have to use black and blue and black and yellow and all these structured colors in Chicago, we got happy. We were able to use lines and purples and pinks. And as somebody that was watching even street art as I grew up as a kid, most of the murals were dark and dingy, and it was depressing. Where once we started doing the graffiti art, it was about the colors, and the colors were vibrant, and it woke up this youth.
Nice. That kind of leads me into another question. Can I ask one more?
Sure.
So I always looked at how there were variations of style between the artists. And that was a very important thing for each individual to have his own style. What would you say has defined Chicago within that realm of having its or developing its own style compared to other artists around the world?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. In Chicago, I'm going to go to the pieces, because the tags develop from the pieces. When you see the pieces on the blue line and all these lines, You notice Chicago is bold. You could read the letters. There's balance and flow. Pengo says it best. If you see an arrow over here, there's going to be an arrow over there. Trickster and Pengo developed this unique style of balance and flow that I think is, as somebody who has documented, that's how I can tell when an artist has grown up here or when they, grew up somewhere else and transpired over to Chicago. They brought a little bit of that style. But Chicago, you could always read the letters. No matter what, they never try to read the letters, and that's one thing that defines Chicago. They're bold. You see it in your J4F, your X-Men. It's always just bold graffiti. And when they do it in the streets, that even and when they do it in the murals, it transpires.
Yeah, that's so true. I'd like to add to that in saying that Chicago, kind of reflects what we are as a state, as a city, even. Just as Chicago is the midway between the coast, we get a little bit of everything. So everything that originated, ours was a culmination and an advancement of most things that were existing, and the basic structure primarily came from here. So Chicago had a style of being very diverse. It was very complex and diverse, meaning it was like you said earlier. South Side had a style, West Side, North Side, and then even as an artist to see where they at. Were they beginner? Were they first year artist? Were they pretty seasoned? It was pretty easy to define because we had those references.
Nice. Okay, well, hey, man, I just wanted to touch bases with y'all and, participate a little bit. I appreciate the information.
Okay, well, thanks for joining us, and definitely look forward to a follow-up with you, all right? Join us again in another session.
All right, take care.
All right, appreciate it. Take care. Okay, that leads us into an interesting component as it relates to the art and craft itself. Structuring forms, structuring letters. When you think about it, how does any form get defined or get structured? So letter structure is a key component to the majority of the graffiti-based forms. Street art can be street art, but graffiti uses all elements of all other art forms in addition to the letter. The letter is emphasized due to the fact of it being universal. When I say universal, language or the phonic structure as it's visualized in the alphabetic word or the alphabetic form is universal. I mean, you have 26 units of a form of a system. As I've said before, it is a system. It is a machine. So those 26 letters can encompass anything in existence. So that means it's universal. So that's why we utilize the letter as the form of the defining factor of our creative endeavor, just as we use sound to depict higher states of being or higher states of mind, or we use writing, drawing, and art and technology to produce technology. So yeah, that's where I'd like to go with it as far as the use of letters as opposed to the use of the visual form in general, not the structured letter. But and keeping going with that, we're with S.H.E Gallery. We're live on cantv.org. You can view us on cantv.org/hotline. You can give us a call at 312-738-1060. Okay, we're going to look at some more video footage, and then we're going to do a little bit more talk with our special guest, Flash. Previous episode, we talked about architecture. I want to elaborate a little bit more on that because when we talk about, the reason we talk about art is to establish a manifesto, which gives us a reference to where we're going.
Gone. They've subsided. No one practice them anymore. So we want to preserve and continue our art to the best and fullest that we can. We just looked at the media and industry. commercial industry. Let's take a quick look in other areas. As we look here, this is a building, architecture. We ventured into architecture. Overseas, it's been more well perceived as far as what this art form is. Now, what this project is called the Hive. This is a building, and they have quite a few structures going up now, and there's a few other architects that are working hand in hand with graffiti artists in developing living structures. So we already secured an architecture. This is a full-on scale architecture building, as you can see. This is City Block, and then it's called the Hive, and it's all based on the concepts and principles of graffiti and graffiti structure. And there's a few other, I'll show you some more details on that.
Okay, and these are some additional models of buildings that were constructed, based off the principles of graffiti. Take a look at some. Some of these are symbolic, are visual, others are actual. These are actual constructions. This is interior by an artist called S.H.E, graffiti artist. This is actually a series of tags of graffiti artists made into a gate in New York City, downtown, in like Manhattan somewhere. These are some additional sculptures. These are overseas. Deconstructivist graffiti architecture, buildings. This is a architectural rendering. Some other uses. Large scale properties. So graffiti it's blossoming. It's growing in a lot of different ways. So when we talk about the art and craft, we have a pretty diverse medium to work with. Have you seen some of these works before, Flash?
Some of them.
Yes. Automotive, airplanes. So
we have evolved.
yes, when you think of just the writing on the wall, it's one thing, but stuff like industry is adapting. This is a huge construction factory. They have these painted characters from some popular street artists. This is like huge scale, large scale. Barges, like huge murals. Barges. The adaptation across overseas, again, like I say, has been unprecedented on the scale of where graffiti and graffiti art is being.
And that's where Chicago needs to open up and open its doors to these artists, because as you see, it's not just on the walls. As I think
there's a little bit more. Check some of this stuff out.
So that's architecture and interior design. Let's look at a few more interior design, architecture, interiors, decors, which is starting to see a lot more popular. We starting to see a lot more art bars. So we are reaching that pinnacle, and our art is transforming. Now we need
Okay. All right, that's a little brief summation. As we're going to go on, we're going to detail more. We're live at cantv.org with S.H.E Gallery. We're going to be closing this evening. I want to thank Flash for joining us this evening. I look forward to the next episode at S.H.E Gallery. And again, you can contact S.H.E Gallery online at sharinghisenergy.net.